how to do this less advanced. You know what I'm saying? There's kind of like, you just kind of have to sort of jump in, and trust that you'll get better the more you do. But for me to dumb it down somehow and just say, oh, just do that, and you'll be happy, you're not. Because you're going, that doesn't look very real. You know, what am I being sold here? So what you try to do is just try to shoot for something, and then, you know, you'll fall short, but you'll have a kind of a thing to sort of, you know, work towards. So I'd rather just treat even a beginner class more like, you know, give you guys credit and just say, okay, it's just like, you know, playing an instrument. You know, you can talk about the notes and the music, but you're going to have to do some practice, you know, like it or not. And you're not going to be instantaneously, you know, where you want to be with it. Nobody ever really is, and that's the frustrating thing. The problem with being adults, too, is we know we're kind of aware of our shortcomings, and that just adds to our frustration. Whereas a kid, you might just sort of jump in because you don't know any better. But with an adult, we're always like critical of everything that we do. You know, we have that, we've learned critique, self-critique and all that. So, you know, you're just not going to do as well as you want because your expectations are already set at a higher level. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just introduce some of the variety into the apple. You can see that there's a kind of a dark sort of purpley or burgundy part down here, and it kind of, you know, there's some different tones. So I'm trying to just not do it all one boring tone. Plus, I don't know if you can notice, the apple has these little red stripes printed on it. Okay, so this is what the apple's little speckles are. In a sense, it has stripes on it. So that just adds some character to the apple. It also has little speckles too, but it has these very distinct stripes as well, which is kind of a fun textural challenge. You have to sort of find the fun in when you're drawing these objects. You know, what's interesting or fun or challenging about drawing this particular thing. And, you know, it's not the round shape. It's maybe the textural bits are kind of the fun part of it. Okay? So you see how it just starts to look a little bit more solid. And then we can take our stump and we can go over what we did with our stump. So you're just kind of, you know, darkening what you've just done with your pencil. Now there's more subtlety in this apple than you realize, but I'm not gonna bombard you with too much stuff right now. The missing part that I'm not doing is the apple is shiny and reflective. So I can actually see a reflection of the banana inside the apple because the apple is glossy. But I'm not going to torture you with that part right now. But that would be a next challenging step, is objects that are glossy or waxy or shiny act as little mirrors. So they tend to, you can almost see yourself or see other objects in that object because it's kind of like a little mini mirror. And it certainly ups the dramatic, you know, drawing challenge to the artist, is to be able to show some of that. Okay, so now I'm gonna save my highlights to last. So I'm gonna cut those highlights in. And there's some, you know, multiple highlights. Some maybe are a little brighter than others. Because you can have like what you call primary highlights. I think we even mentioned this last week. You can have sort of secondary highlights that are maybe not quite as dramatic, but they're there nonetheless. So you just try to do which ones you can. You know, there may be 3 or 4 or 5 different ones, but okay. Right, but that just, I think, helps to give the object more of a sense of like roundedness. That's really what highlights do, is they really complete the thought as far as the roundedness of things. That's kind of their job, is to, that's why they call them highlights, is they occur on the highest areas of the object. So what they do is highlights make things look like they're coming out at you, and shadows make things look like they're kind of going back in space. So it's a little bit of a 1-2 combo between highlights and shadows that kind of sell you on the roundedness of something, the illusion. Because remember, all we're doing is just a bunch of optical tricks, really. We're just kind of fancy little tricksters with our pencil. Okay? So now we move on to the banana. Now the banana's not too bad, you know, it doesn't have a lot of detail in it, but it has some. So the worst thing you can do is just leave things completely blank. It looks boring, it doesn't look very real. So you have to just sort of ask yourself, is there any little textural notes or little things that I'm kind of missing that I could add? Little, you know, like with a real banana, these are plastic ones. You know, real bananas might have brown spots on them, you know, age spots. So this one kind of does. It has a little bit of stain from being in the bag. The fruit rubs up against each other and gets little colored spots on them, which kind of mimic this sort of brown spots in that they really would have. So that's kind of good. But they're not real. I did use real bananas at one time, but then I left them in my car, and that I realized, now let's just get some fake bananas. Because then I would use them and then I'd take them home, you know, and I'd eat them, you know. But I forgot one time and it really stank up my car. So I'm like, you know what? They're not gonna care. But you know, real bananas certainly do have maybe a little more. You know, can have a little more character. These are all fake fruit, you know. They look pretty decent. You know, they're good enough to draw on that, but you know, there may be some things about real objects, obviously, that have a little more something to them, you know. So, you know, but it's okay. You don't always have to be drawing like the real thing to learn some lessons about drawing, you know. Just like you can draw from photographs without drawing, you know, live models and still learn things about, you know, portraiture or whatever. Okay, so now I'm going to put the highlight. Now this guy has a highlight that kind of runs down the length of the banana, sort of like this. It's like a little river of highlight that kind of goes down the middle of the banana. So that's what you find is highlights change their shape depending on what surface they're falling across. So they might go down the hill, or they might look more square or rounded depending on the shape of the object. So highlights change their shape depending on what they're flowing across, what the surface is that they're flowing across. And they change dramatically depending on your angle of view. So the way you see a highlight is going to change completely if you just move your head a little bit. So, you know, what I see may be not what you see at all. Okay. And you notice how I've gotten like stuff on my hand. So I've made little smears on my drawing, and this is what's really great about kneaded erasers. They can be a drawing tool, but then they can also just be like a maintenance tool. So you can take off the fingerprints and little smudgy areas and just kind of clean your drawing up. No eraser shavings, which is nice. No shavings. So you just have a nice clean drawing then with no shavings. Now, you see this, here's the contact shadow for the banana, running pretty much the whole length of the banana. So I'll put that in the cast shadow here. Or you can just use your finger to blend too. You know, you use whatever you want to use. Towel, stump, finger, you know, whatever gets the job done. There's no right or wrong about it. I think you'll find that the stumps are probably, and your towel is going to push the graphite into the paper a little bit more efficiently than your finger. Sometimes the only thing you wind up with is a dirty finger. You don't really quite get the, you know, the dramatic shading or blending that you'd hope for with your finger. I used to just try to use my finger pretty much, and then I started using the stumps more, and I really enjoyed what they bring to the table. Okay. Oh, gotta finish this little shadow here for the apple. Now, you may not have a lot of these dramatic two-tone shadows. I think that's probably created by the brighter light source. So your shadows may be a little duller, not quite as interesting in some ways, but that's okay. Just remember to keep shadows. Don't put like a heavy black outline around them. Try to allow them to just be these kind of like slightly nebulous shapes. You know, not too boldly defined with a heavy outline. They can certainly have a shape, but if they have a little fog to them, that makes your shadows, I think, seem a little more real. If they have a little fuzz around the outside. So. The brighter the light source, the more well-defined the shadow will be. So certainly if I had a dark room with a very bright light source, the shadows would seem like they do have a little bit of a harder edge. But even still, I like to always put a little fuzz around them. Now, you could just say, call that done, and leave it. Or you could decide that you needed a little bit of, like we did with the ball. You know, we could have just left it as a ball, just on white. But this is optional. You don't have to put a background, you know, in every single drawing that you do. It's not some kind of law or something. You could put a little something behind here if you felt like it. And what I mean by that is you could decide, now if I put the mat board where it really is in reality, it would be off the picture plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the mat board and pretend that it's half the size that it is, and just use the same angles, the same perspective, but just bring it down in scale. So I'm keeping the same angles, but just shrinking it. Does that make sense? So that it participates in the drawing. It's not so far removed that it doesn't, you know, it just doesn't look good. So what I'm doing is I'm just bringing it in so that a little tighter, a little closer, so that it participates in the drawing. Then I do what we did last week, but this time I don't have to kill myself with a really dark background. I can just do a light background, maybe do a little something different than we did last week, although the method of doing it is still kind of similar, where you just take your pencil and you just do a very choppy, kind of gaseous, you know, kind of thing here, not anything too aggressive. I keep it nice and soft, just loosey-goosey, okay? But I put a little something back there just to make the table stand out a little bit. And then I'll take my towel, like we did last time, and just do the same, you know. Now I just buff it in kind of like a circular motion, and that kind of makes it sort of cloudy. stop where the edge of the table is. You know, don't bring it down past the edge of the board. But just put like a little cloudy, you know, something back there. And it just gives a little sense that there's something back there. We don't really care what it is, but it, you know, just gives us a little something there. So, okay. And then I always, as a matter of, before I declare something totally done, I like to just, once everything is done, or once everything is in place, I just spend a few minutes at the end just saying, you know, is there anything I can do to sort of punch this up a little bit more, or, you know, fix something, or add a little something to it, or, you know, it's rare that I just kind of go, oh, well, I don't need to do anything at all. You know? So I just always like to kind of check and see if there's just something more I can kind of, a little extra polish at the end before I sort of, you know, declare it all done, that sort of thing. So, and that may mean just, you know, lightening things, it may mean darkening things, but it's just kind of, once you have all the elements in place, you can now honestly know what you're dealing with. And so you can make little changes now because you have all the elements there, and so you can now say, okay, it's all complete as far as the amount of stuff, but I just want to decide, you know, should I make it a little lighter? Should I make it a little darker? You know, stuff like that. So that's really what I'm just doing here, is I'm just making some final decisions about stuff. Okay? And then you can say, once you've decided that you're done with it, you can put your little John Hancock on it. Now, some people put their initials, some people put their full name, other people like to hide their signature in the drawing somewhere, or whatever. You know, whatever. That's totally your choice. There's no right or wrong about that. Okay. So what we try to do is we try to have a range from, so there should be some dark values, some medium values, and some light values, so that it gives us the most bang for our buck as far as 3D goes. So if I looked at my drawing and it was all just kind of light medium stuff and there was nothing dark in it, I would ask myself, is there any opportunity for me to go back and just kind of add some other darks to it? You know, based on what I'm seeing, it's not all just stuff you make up out of your head. It should be based on what you're observing too. But just adding those nice little bits of dark really adds a sense of drama to the drawing. You get a lot of drama with those dark values. That's why you don't want to be afraid of them. You want to be excited about those dark values, because that's what gives you the drama and the oomph in the drawing. So you want to be able to say that I've got a range of values in the drawing, and then it registers as a 3D looking thing to the viewer then, hopefully. Okay? All right, so now this is a good time, as always, to take a little break and just rip off a piece of paper out of your